Welcome back, guys, to yet another Initial Focus video, and this is the long-awaited Apple Fanboy Reviews Android. So many months ago I created a video called Apple Fanboy Tries Android, and that still is my most popular video, so I hope you guys enjoy this one as well. It definitely won't be 15 minutes like the previous one was. But basically for the past couple of months I have had the chance to play with a number of different Android phones. I started out with a white Nexus 5. I then graduated to the OnePlus One, and then most recently, about a month or two ago, I got the OnePlus 2. Now, I'm not going to do the cons of iOS and Android. I'm basically going to say three of the best pros of iOS and three of the best pros of Android. So I'm only going to do the positives from my experience, because for the most part it's been a pretty positive experience from both ends. So everything from this point on is completely my opinion. It is not fact. You may have a very different experience with iOS or Android than I have, so take it for what it is. This is just my opinion. So let's start off with the good old iOS, since that is the easy one for me since I've had it for so long. One of the biggest things that people talk about is upgradability. So whether or not you have a iPhone 6s Plus or still an iPhone 4s, you still can be on iOS 9. Now, of course, the experience between the two is going to be vastly different. You can get the majority of the features going back to a phone that is pretty much 4 years old by this point, which you really don't see on Android. You have certain phones that come out with new versions of Android, but it's usually a couple months before all phones get that latest version of Android, or sometimes they don't get any of them at all. So yeah, upgradability is a very good one. Now, moving over to the Android side of things, the first one I want to talk about is organizing. I love the fact that you can add folders to different screens and add icons on different screens and not have to fill up that entire page before you move on to the next page. I would love if I could have just a social media page, a business page, and I don't know, another page with just a couple of apps without having to fill up my entire page like I do on iPhone before I move on to the next page. So for organizing, I absolutely love the ability to organize the way I want with widgets and folders and everything on Android, so huge plus there. Moving back to iOS, we have ease of use. This is probably the number one thing that everyone talks about, is ease of use. Now, one thing that usually goes along with it, people talk about, is reliability. I'm not going to bring that up so much, not because I don't think iPhones are reliable, but I honestly have seen my Android phones be pretty reliable as well, except for a couple stupid moments, but that was total user error on my part. So I don't want to talk about reliability because everything I've had thus far seems pretty reliable. But ease of use, whether you are completely new to technology, you've had it forever, whether you're 5 years old or you're 80,000 years old, I think that iOS just has the ability to be a lot easier because every device is the same. Whether or not you start off with an iPod Touch and then go to iPhone or iPad, it's pretty much all the same feel of technology. So once you learn one thing, it's very easy the next time you get a new device to pretty much pick it up and get out of the box and just use it. And even though some software updates make things different, it's usually not a whole world of change. Jumping back to the Android side of things, you have, of course, open source. Now, what that means is pretty much any manufacturer or developer can create things that ultimately change your entire experience on Android. So when I had the Nexus 5, that's pretty much stock Android. It is stock Android. It's straight from Google. And so I was able to put different themes on it and launchers and all this different stuff. And that's where you start to see some working very well, some not working so well. But overall, I found that I've liked to keep a pretty stock experience on my Android. That's why I love OnePlus for building their Oxygen OS, which is kind of their own version of Android, based off 5.1, I believe, is their latest Oxygen OS. And it's very reliable, very smooth, very fast, no bloatware. Just a very all-around good operating system. But if I wanted to completely change my OnePlus 2 to look different than someone else's OnePlus 2, I have the ability to do that, which is really cool. Now, last one for iOS is going to be the App Store. Now, for me, this is pretty much the biggest reason that I don't think I could ever, or at least as of right now, solely move over to Android side of things. When you think back and actually look at, all of your purchases within iTunes, the App Store, everything, I mean, that's how they ultimately get you. I've spent way too much money on apps and music and things like that to totally ditch my iPhone and jump over to Android. If it wasn't for this reason, I probably could easily switch and be very happy. But having so many purchases and so much extra history on iOS devices, it'd be really hard to do that. Now, the reason this is a pro for iPhone, not just a personal kind of can't get over, is I don't think anything beats the App Store. Now, I haven't checked the latest numbers to see how close the Google Play Store or Windows Store is compared to the iOS App Store, but I'm pretty certain that there are still far more apps in the App Store than there are in Android. Not to mention, of those apps, when a developer first creates an app, they usually just create it for iOS first. Not all the time. There are some very cool apps that are Android only or come later to iOS, but for the most part, you see iOS available now, Android will be coming down the road, and usually the Android version is a lot less stable or not as refined as the iOS version is up first. So I definitely think the App Store is a huge plus for all iOS devices. And then last but not least, for the Android side, the last pro is going to be device-specific features. Now, I used to talk about this as a con, where iPhone tries to take the best out of all worlds. So it tries to every year come out with the best camera, the best screen, the best processor, and I know that from a tech spec sheet, it doesn't knock all of that out. But it tries to kind of be the best all-around phone. Now, is it or is it not? That's up to you to decide. But Android really seems to focus on specific features for phones. So think about Samsung. They came out with like 25 phones this year, and one was really, really good at battery life, one was really durable, and one had a fantastic camera. And it seems to me that most Android phones usually have one flagship kind of feature. And again, I used to talk about it as a con, but it can also be a pro. If battery life is all you care about and you just want a decent camera, decent processor, and all that good stuff, then you can buy that. Now, the Galaxy S6 and a couple other ones are really good, but it's kind of personal preference really past that. So that's it, guys. That is my overall review of Android, not reviews of the specific phones or anything like that. If you want to see that, definitely let me know down in the comments below. But this was really just me talking about my experience with Android the past couple months. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Don't forget to like and subscribe.